Here we are walking down the starboard side of the Ark, and over here is the middle of the structure, and you can see how massive the Ark would have been.
They weren't supposed to open it. For decades, the Durupanar formation in Turkey was dismissed, hidden behind official denials and quiet suppression. But now, that silence is broken. A team of researchers has finally breached the sealed chambers beneath the site, and what they uncovered should not exist. Beneath layers of ancient earth, they found engineered metal alloys, far beyond Bronze Age capability. Massive timber beams, over 3 feet thick, still intact after nearly 5,000 years. A perfectly designed drainage system, built with a level of precision that modern science wouldn't fully understand until thousands of years later. But that was only the beginning. At the core of the structure, inside a chamber that had never been touched, they discovered human remains, genetically diverse, from bloodlines spanning entire continents, and beside them, stone tablets. Not stories, not myths, warnings. Warnings about cycles of destruction, about civilizations rising and being erased. This isn't just the story of Noah's Ark. This is something far more disturbing. Because if this is real, then it means humanity has ended before, and someone in the distant past knew it would happen again. Subscribe now, because what you're about to see doesn't just challenge history, it rewrites it completely. The Durupanar Formation, named after the Turkish military officer who first noticed it during an aerial mission in 1959, has been surrounded by debate from the very beginning. From above, the site revealed something striking. A massive, boat-like shape etched into the mountainside, complete with raised edges resembling a hull and a pointed front aligned downhill. What made it even more unsettling were its proportions. Measuring roughly 515 feet in length and 85 feet in width, the dimensions closely mirrored the ancient specifications described in the Book of Genesis for Noah's Ark. For years, scientists dismissed it as a natural formation, nothing more than hardened mudflows shaped by seismic forces. But that explanation started to unravel with the arrival of modern technology. Using advanced ground-penetrating radar, an international research team conducted detailed scans of the area. What they found beneath the surface defied conventional geology. Hidden below the earth were repeating organized structures, long parallel patterns stretching across the entire formation. These weren't random. They suggested internal divisions, compartments separated by dense material that appeared intentionally placed. Even more compelling, these divisions contained unusually high concentrations of iron, forming straight, reinforcing lines. This wasn't nature at work. This looked engineered. When researchers extracted core samples, the mystery deepened. Embedded within the rock were fragments of petrified wood, organic material preserved for thousands of years, alongside metal fasteners. These weren't crude pieces either. The rivets were made from an iron-manganese alloy and showed clear signs of shaping, consistent sizing, hammer impressions, and evidence of advanced metalworking techniques. Radiocarbon testing of the organic remains placed them at around 4,800 years old, right within the time frame of ancient flood accounts. This period aligns with Mesopotamian records, early Egyptian timelines, and biblical chronology. The overlap was too precise to ignore. With official permission, the team began a controlled excavation. Layer by layer, thousands of years of sediment were carefully removed, and as they went deeper, the structure became clearer. They uncovered enormous petrified beams arranged in a grid-like framework, suggesting a complex internal support system designed to handle immense weight. Analysis identified the wood as oak, pine, and cypress, species historically prized for their durability and resistance to decay, exactly the kind of materials ancient shipbuilders would have relied on. But the scale was staggering. Some beams measured over 3 feet thick, implying the use of massive, ancient trees. Whoever built this had access to vast, old-growth forests, and the capability to cut, transport, and shape timber on a monumental level. Between these beams, traces of pitch and bitumen were discovered, natural substances historically used to seal ships and make them waterproof. Chemical testing revealed that the material had been heated and processed, enhancing its effectiveness. It wasn't applied randomly either. Every joint and seam had been carefully coated, layer upon layer. As excavation progressed, metal detection equipment began picking up signals across the site. Hundreds of objects were buried within. Most had corroded beyond recognition, but some remained identifiable. Metal brackets, connectors, and even massive anchor stones drilled with holes for rope. These anchors weighed several tons and bore marks consistent with dragging, as if they had once been deployed in water. One of the most astonishing finds lay near the center of the formation, buried beneath nearly 15 feet of compacted sediment. The team uncovered a sealed chamber, roughly 20 feet long and 12 feet wide, constructed with carefully cut stone blocks, bonded by a hardened mortar. The craftsmanship was precise. The stones fit tightly together, and the mortar, a lime-based compound, had solidified over time to a strength comparable to concrete. Inside this chamber, researchers found fragments of pottery, animal remains, and large storage vessels, clay containers likely used for holding food or liquids. But the pottery didn't match any known culture from the region during that era, raising a troubling possibility. The builders may not belong to any civilization we currently recognize. The animal bones told another story. They included species from different environments: cattle, sheep, goats, birds, the exact mix one would expect if the goal was preservation of life. And as the excavation reached deeper levels, the engineering became even more advanced. Beneath what appeared to be the main deck, the team identified a drainage system, carefully carved channels, designed to redirect water away from the interior spaces. This wasn't primitive construction. This was planning, precision, purpose. And the deeper they went, the harder it became to deny that this structure was built for something far greater than anyone had imagined. The drainage channels inside the structure weren't just functional. They were precisely angled to control water movement with remarkable efficiency, showing an understanding of hydraulic engineering that should not have existed during the Bronze Age. Even more impressive was the internal layout. Ground-penetrating radar revealed at least 13 separate chambers running the full length of the vessel, each divided by walls roughly 18 inches thick. The uniform spacing and structure suggested deliberate planning backed by mathematical precision rather than random construction. Every compartment seemed intentional. Larger sections likely served for livestock, while smaller ones may have functioned as storage areas or living quarters. But one discovery left researchers completely stunned. Some interior walls were coated with an unknown substance. Laboratory testing identified it as a polymer-like compound with properties strikingly similar to modern epoxy resin. Yet it wasn't naturally occurring. It appeared to be artificially created by combining plant resins with mineral additives, forming a waterproof, hardened protective layer. The level of material science required to produce something like this was believed to be far beyond any known ancient technology. The metal findings were just as unsettling. Iron rivets and structural brackets contained trace amounts of titanium and aluminum, elements not expected in Bronze Age metallurgy. Their presence suggested either access to multiple rare sources or highly advanced refining methods capable of isolating and combining metals into stronger, engineered alloys. Then came one of the most disturbing structural discoveries: a ventilation system. Near the upper sections of the vessel, researchers identified rectangular openings connected to vertical shafts running deep into the lower compartments. These shafts created a natural airflow system, pulling fresh air in from above while pushing stale air out through circulation. The principles behind this kind of airflow design would not be formally understood until the Renaissance period. Yet here it was, fully implemented thousands of years earlier. As excavation reached the deepest layers, the investigation shifted from extraordinary to extraordinary in a completely different way. Beneath the keel of the structure, scientists discovered a layer of sedimentary rock unlike anything in the surrounding geology. Embedded within it were marine microfossils, tiny organisms that only survive in ocean environments. Finding ocean life remnants at an elevation of 6,500 feet in a mountainous region pointed to a single conclusion. This area had once been submerged underwater. Further geological surveys confirmed it. The region bore clear evidence of a massive flooding event on a scale far beyond normal river or lake overflow. In some places, sediment layers exceeded 30 feet in thickness, indicating prolonged and powerful inundation rather than a brief flood. Radiometric dating placed these marine fossils at roughly 5,000 years old, matching the estimated age of the structure above them. This led to a striking realization. The vessel hadn't been constructed on a mountain at all. It had settled there after the waters receded. Core samples taken from the surrounding geology told an even more violent story. The rock layers showed chaotic, rapid deposition. Materials from multiple geological periods mixed together as if violently stirred and dropped all at once. This was not slow erosion. It was catastrophic displacement. Geologists also identified clear tsunami indicators in the rock formations, distinct layering patterns only formed by massive, high-energy wave events. These waves would have been powerful enough to carry a large wooden structure up mountainous terrain before depositing it as the waters retreated. But the most haunting discovery came from a small cavity near the bow. Inside, researchers found partially fossilized human remains belonging to at least 3 individuals. There were no signs of trauma, suggesting they did not die violently, but rather from natural causes, while still inside the vessel. Genetic testing added another layer of mystery. The individuals represented distinct ancestral lineages from across the ancient Near East and beyond, implying a diverse population had once been brought together here. At this point, scientists faced a growing contradiction. If this truly was an ancient survival vessel designed to endure a global flood, then its construction represented engineering sophistication far beyond what history attributes to that era. Its design included principles of naval architecture that would not be formally rediscovered for thousands of years, and the parallels to ancient stories were impossible to ignore. Flood narratives from across civilizations describe strikingly similar events. The Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh speaks of a massive vessel measured in cubits. The Hindu Matsya Purana describes a ship large enough to preserve all life forms. Chinese flood myths tell of enormous boats surviving a world-consuming deluge. The Turkish site suddenly appeared to bridge myth and material reality. It suggested the flood was not symbolic, it was real, and more importantly, someone had known it was coming far enough in advance to prepare for it. The scale of the project implied years of construction, thousands of workers, and coordination across vast regions. Every detail had to be planned with extreme precision. But one question remained unanswered. How did they know? The foresight required suggested either advanced environmental prediction or knowledge systems that have since been lost to history. Even the vessel's placement hinted at intentional positioning, possibly chosen for survival advantage. Then, there were the materials, advanced metals, engineered sealants, and complex structural systems, all pointing toward a civilization far more advanced than previously believed. If such a society truly existed 5,000 years ago, then its disappearance raises a troubling question. Did the flood that the vessel survived also erase the civilization that built it? And then came the final discovery. In the stern section, researchers uncovered a sealed chamber untouched since the vessel's final resting place. Inside were stone tablets and preserved clay vessels containing written records. The inscriptions did not match any known ancient language. However, linguistic analysis revealed structural similarities to Proto-Sumerian writing and early Egyptian hieroglyphs, languages that only emerged centuries after the supposed flood event. It suggested something unsettling, that the earliest known civilizations may not have been the beginning of human history, but what remained after something came before. The stone tablets weren't just symbolic artifacts. They read like structured records, blueprints, technical instructions, and navigational logs etched with deliberate precision. They described how the vessel was built, how animals and provisions were collected, and how the entire journey was sustained over time. According to translated sections, the structure remained afloat for more than 5 months, drifting across waters that, as the text describes, submerged all the high hills beneath the heavens. The accounts go on to detail the slow retreat of the floodwaters, the release of birds sent to find dry land, and the eventual grounding of the vessel on the mountains of Ararat, the ancient name associated with the very region where the Turkish site stands today. But alongside these records, researchers found something far more unsettling: warnings. The inscriptions speak of a civilization that had become consumed by pride and moral collapse, described as the reason for its destruction. Yet the purpose of the vessel was not only survival, it was preservation, not just of human life, but of entire systems of knowledge, biological diversity, seeds, and the foundations needed to rebuild everything from the ground up. In essence, it functioned as a controlled restart mechanism for civilization, a vessel designed not simply to survive disaster, but to reset after it. And this is where the implications become difficult to ignore. The most disturbing realization is not merely that a global flood may have occurred, or that a structure like the Ark may have existed. It is what that suggests about human history itself, that this may not be the first time. The evidence from the Turkish site points toward a far more unsettling possibility, that advanced human societies have risen before us, achieved significant knowledge, and then been erased by catastrophic events so complete they left only fragments behind. If that interpretation holds true, then we are not the beginning of civilization's story. We are the latest iteration in a repeating cycle, one that has unfolded across deep time, long before recorded history began. And if it has happened before, there is no certainty it cannot happen again. The builders of this vessel appear to have anticipated it. They prepared for collapse, preserved what mattered most, and left behind instructions embedded in stone, waiting for a future they would never see. Now that their site has been uncovered, their message is no longer buried, which leaves us with a final, uncomfortable question. Are we truly paying attention? The discovery in Turkey is no longer hidden beneath layers of earth and time. The evidence is here, exposed, and undeniable. What happens next depends on us, whether we understand it, dismiss it, or learn from it, because the outcome may decide something larger than archaeology. It may decide whether this civilization continues forward or becomes just another forgotten chapter in a repeating history we were never meant to ignore.